Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. This is doing my usual introduction to my weekly newsletter, and this time it's for August 31st, 2018. Well, without further ado, I'll start off with my usual news summary that I've got for you. And the first story this week is Best Newfangled Family Tree is in. It's the section 2 of the September 2018 issue. As always, Beth's always got a great variety of articles to do with all things Scottish, both in Scotland and in the rest of the world. The next story is GERS, whose subsidy and where is the question. These are the annual audited figures that come out every year, showing Scotland's finances. It says the latest figures on taxation and spending in Scotland provide fresh fuel to keep constitutional debates burning. But at least it gives you a summary, so it's well worth a wee read to keep you up to date. It's an annual report, so worth having a glance over. The next story is New Zealand comic scoops coveted Fringe Comedy Award. New Zealand comic Rose Matafio has won the biggest comedy award at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. So good on her. Always nice to see New Zealand represented. Next story is UK to start work on satellite system to rival the EU's Galileo project. Britain is to start work on its own satellite navigation system to rival the European Union's Galileo project because the UK's access to sensitive security information could be restricted after Brexit. And considering we put in $1 billion or so into that project, that's disgusting. However, I think we can probably do a better system. Now, CanZ UK is an open door. Politicians should be queuing to push it. Says Matt Kilcoyne explains why the UK should embrace free movement and trade with Canada, Australia and New Zealand and open up a new world for British citizens outside the European Union. I'm very much in favour of that CanZ UK, and if you don't know about it, you need to read the stories. I've got a followed up one with saying CanZ UK has been adopted as official federal party policy. It says CanZ UK international proposals for free movement, trade and foreign policy cooperation between Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom have been adopted as official federal party policy for the Conservative Party of Canada following the party's convention in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I mean, that's big, you know. Okay, so we've been reading both of these. Hopefully there's also links to the CanZ site so you can read a lot more and learn more about it, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Next story is national title drives Brooke Henderson into Canadian golf lore. It says Canadian Pacific's Women's Open victory breaks a 45-year drought for Canadians at home tournament. So good on her. I've been watching her actually ever since she came on the scene. And I remember writing about her when I was doing the newsletter for the Knights Templars in Canada, saying this is one to watch, and she's obviously proven to be well worth watching. Gaelic Archive of Songs and Stories unlocked for the first time. Said their songs and stories speak of a different time in Scotland's history. Really good article, that. And if you know anything about Gaelic, it's certainly well worth a visit to that story. Next one is the false assumptions behind Project Fear 2. A no-deal outcome would be far from ideal, but the government's warnings are overblown. That's from CapX. The Lonach Highlanders march on for 177th year. Armed with 8-foot long pipes and Lochaber axes, it is believed the Lonach Highlanders are the largest body of non-military men in the country to carry ceremonial weapons. And the next story is, why is Brexit Britain getting entangled in the EU's defence structures? First time I've heard anything about this at all, and that's why I wanted to highlight it to you, because it seems nonsensical to me. Read the story and decide for yourself. Ancient clan seal found in castle ruins. A clan seal dating from the bitter feud between the Campbells and MacDonalds has been found in ruins on an island off the west coast of Scotland. It's a Campbell seal. And the final story I've got for you is the Brno coup has failed. It's by Robert Lee. He says Robert Lee believes that the Chequers coup has failed. He explains why he believes that a clean Brexit, either through a Canada-style agreement or through a no deal, is after all going to happen. And that's the main stories I got for you this week. So on to Electric Canadian. The first wee article I've got here is actually about butter chicken. It's a £2 pack basically, but I should explain that I've always loved curries, and I usually had a curry every week in Scotland. So when I first came to Canada, I really wanted a curry, and it was several months before I managed to get myself a curry. And it ended up being in Guelph, where they had a curry restaurant. And so when I heard that, I made a beeline and really enjoyed my curry. But I've noticed very recently that someone mentioned to me that try M&M, the frozen food shop. And apparently there's a chain, and I think they're all over Canada. But I tried their butter chicken, and it says, we believe our butter chicken is as good or better as what you'll find in a restaurant. It's creamy, mildly spicy, tandoori style sauce. It's made from cream, butter and tomatoes, mixed with seasoned white chicken pieces and fragrant basmati rice. And it's on a sale price at the moment of $6.99. I think the usual price is $10.99, but it's on sale at the moment at $6.99. So if you fancy a curry and you don't have a curry restaurant anywhere near you, see if there's an M&M, and I've given you a link to the M&M site, so you might be able to locate a store somewhere near you. But anyway, I just thought I'd kind of mention that. Canada's provinces have added volume 11, the Dominion, Missions, Arts and Letters, part 1. It's the latest issue there. Remember, there's 22 volumes, so that's us halfway through this. The Engineering Journal, I've added the volume for 1951. It includes topics such as aeronautical research in Canada, agricultural engineering, air conditioning, air pollution, atomic bombs, Bailey bridges, book reviews, bridges, building design, citizenship, civil defence, cold weather construction, dams, emigration, engineering education, helicopters, hydroelectric plants, industrial relations, irrigation, obituaries, pulp and paper research, railways, rivers and ice control, ships, soil mechanics, spillways, street traffic control, surveying, trusses, tunnels and washways, etc. Lots more. Always tons to read in these volumes. And then I've got up the 1903 volume of the Mining Review. Then, historical descriptive account of the island of Cape Breton. and its Memorials of the French Regime with Bibliographic, Historical and Critical Notes by J.G. Runot. It was published in 1892. When you go to Cape Breton, there isn't much obvious French stuff in Cape Breton. It's mostly Scottish, Gaelic. So this was an interesting add to the story about Cape Breton. I got a little book up about farm boys and girls. It's by William McKeever, published in 1913. And then another book is Across the Prairie Lands of Manitoba and the Canadian Northwest. It's a Wiltshire Band's Travels in the Summer of 1882 by Sidney J. Pocock. And another one, Rural Life in Canada. It's Trend and Tasks by John McDougall, published in 1913. And then Prairie and Rocky Mountain Adventures, or Life in the West, to which will be added a view of the states and territories, regions of our Western Empire, embracing history, statistics and geography, and descriptions of the chief cities of the West. It's by John V. Van Tramp, published in 1866. Note that this is mainly for the USA, but there's a chapter on the Red River settlement as it happens. Then finally a wee article by Conrad Black, Trump has already won on impeachment, is his article. Then on to Electric Scotland. I put out a book about the permanent organisation of the Royal Air Force. This is just after the Second World War was finished, so clearly it was important to look at the organisation post-war. The Pillar Towers of Scotland, I've got up, it's by Thomas A. Wise. Sergeant York and his people. This is a different one. This is an audio recording. And it's, from a cabin back in the mountains of Tennessee, 48 miles from the railroad, a young man went to the World War. And he did amazing things. For example, he solely captured something like, I think it was 1,300 Germans on his own. Amazing character, and certainly well worth the read, or listen to in this case. So I hope you enjoy listening to that. The Eastern Question is a 2-volume publication. It's from the Treaty of Paris in 1856 to the Treaty of Berlin in 1878, and to the Second Afghan War, and it's by the Duke of Argyll. So very interesting. Then I've got a guide to the Highlands and Islands, including Orkney and Shetland. It's 1850, so obviously it's way out of date from the point of view of a lot of the places, but I often like these historical guides because they often mention places you should look for, and modern guys often miss these out. So I think that, if you're wanting to do a tour of the Highlands and Islands and Orkney and Shetland, I think it's well worth having a reread of these. Then Husbandry of Scotland is the next book I've got. It's actually a sketch of chapter 2 on the practical details of the Scotch system of husbandry, and it's by Sir John Sinclair, published in 1810. But this is a time when Scotland was really just getting to grips with agriculture and getting new systems in place to make it much more efficient. So a very good time period that. UK Overseas Territories. I've made a permanent link for this within our Scots Diaspora section because it's basically an overview of the UK Overseas Territories, but there's many small documentaries about each one. And I've given you a couple of inbuilt videos to give you an overview, but there's links then to pages that will give you 40 odd small videos of many of the topics discussed. And it does open your eyes, because all these are actual British territories, so if you're a British citizen you can go to there for as long as you want, you know, it's in Britain. And then the final book I've got for you this week is Jane's All the World's Aircraft. Jane's is actually a very famous publication, still going, but this is one in 1947, so after the Second World War, when things had just started to settle down afterwards. And I thought maybe I'd just put it up as an historical note, because there's tons of adverts in it, and obviously a lot of the companies that are advertising were around during the Second World War and were actually making products to help the war effort. So I thought it'd be a good historical perspective. I could put other volumes up, but I felt this one was probably about the best I could find. So it's there now as a permanent reference. And then the story for this week is The White Headhunter. It's by Graham Ogilvy. So I hope you enjoy our Headhunter. The chap himself is a guy called Jack Renton, who comes from Strongness in Orkney. So good Scottish roots there, and apparently he did some really good things. So I hope you enjoy that story. And that's basically it for this week, apart from I give you a quick update of what's going on with the sites. Electric Canada and Electric Scotland are obviously up and working. I've just had a communication from the V Bulletin people, and hopefully later on today they will manage to extract a copy of the databases that I've been waiting for. And with these databases I'll be able to get electricscotland.org back up in our community system. So I very much look forward to that, getting that. And hopefully that means within the next week we'll have the community back and I can start posting up again there. So there we go, progress being made again, and we'll, as always, I'll put a link to the actual PDF file, newsletter with all the links to all these stories I've talked about underneath of this video. Okay, hope you have a good weekend, take care.